We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. Before we do, I know the TV screen is always a bit small, so I have copies of the slides that we'll be going through. Does anybody like a copy? You can follow through. You guys are our front row center, though. You guys, maybe for the people over there. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I think a few more people may trickle in, but let me pray for us, and then we'll get started and go through what we have to present. So let's turn to the Lord in prayer at this time. Father, we thank you for just gathering us here as we discuss, Lord, hopefully your will in the life of your people here at New Life Fullerton. And we pray, Lord, that you would use this as a way to communicate clarity, conviction, as well as a goal in terms of striving to be obedient to the Great Commission and all the promises of your word. We pray, Lord, that you will be with all the people who will be presenting, that they will do so in a way that is encouraging to the church, but also effective in its clarity and communication. And Lord, we thank you. We do all this for you. So bless our time here and help us to see that all this is for the sake of the kingdom. And we pray this in Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, so some of us may be new, and some of us may have not been able to make the meeting in January, but what we're essentially doing here is that we are giving basically a mid-year or third quarter update on some of the goals that we have placed for the church starting in January. And we gave a town hall in January. We explained, Lord willing, our 3 goals for the year, or the next 3 to 5 years. And so we just want to give a mid-year update on that. And so we'll periodically continue to do so in the years to come as well. So the point of this is actually just to communicate, and we'll take a moment of questions at the end. But we want to communicate and to remind and to reiterate our vision, our goals, as well as our specific action plans, and then give an update on those endeavors, and then take questions at the end. So here's the general outline of what we'll be covering. And good news for everyone, I'm going to try to talk a lot less than I do in the past, so I could get other people who are leading and spearheading different ministries to be able to share their heart and conviction for this purpose as well. So we'll quickly review our vision and mission again. And then secondly, we'll go through a status update of the 3 goals and our strategy that we started to implement in January. And we'll give an update in terms of how the leaders and myself see where we are. And then we'll move into, which is related, the budget for 2016, just an update by Elder Daniel. And then we'll end on some action steps and so a call to action for people. This is how you can participate and help us move along in our vision and our goals. And then we'll take a short time for question and answer. So those are the 4 agenda items that we'll go through. So we'll start again just as a reminder for all of us. This is our New Life Fullerton Church vision and mission. And this is our vision statement as again. So many of us may feel like this is a broken record, but it's always good so that you get tired of it, so at least you'll know it and be familiar with it. It says, New Life Mission Church seeks to renew lives in Orange County and beyond by teaching and living out the historic Christian truths of the gospel. So that's basically what we want to try to accomplish. That is our goal. This is what we are about, and this is what we're striving to achieve. And again, as a reminder, we want to be focused. Our church is in Fullerton. We want to focus on Orange County, particularly Fullerton, and then extend out from there. We want to renew lives. We want to focus on people and healing and saving people, and not necessarily culture, even though we can influence and impact culture. But we're not going to try to create what they call sort of gospel ecosystems to create Christian culture and Christian dynamics out there in society. We think we want to reach people with the gospel, with the love of Christ, and reach people. And so that's what we strive to do. How do we do this? We want to do this generally through teaching and also living out the historic Christian truths of the gospel. Historic basically means, as you know, we're a Reformed church, we're TCA. So that for us means the Westminster Standards, the Confession, Larger Shorter Catechism, but also we also wanted to include like the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, and even what they call the Dutch Reformed trajectory, which is going to be the 3 forms of unity. So we want to hold on to that, and we think there's something rich and beautiful. So we want to teach it, but we want to apply it to our lives, and we want to reach people with that truth. So that's what our vision is. We believe in this, that we have something to offer this world because Jesus came into this world, and we want to offer this to people, to our surrounding communities and beyond. So The question about mission is basically like, that is our vision, that's our goal. How do we achieve our mission? How do we achieve our vision? And that's going to be through our mission statement. And so this pyramid, so to speak, focuses on the 3 areas of our church life. So there's going to be worship, both formal and also everyday life. There will be community. We want to cultivate gospel-loving community. And we also want to be evangelistic, both in terms of mission work abroad, but also local evangelism and local mercy ministry. And so I'm just going to read through this because we've seen this before. But we do consider here at New Life Fullerton that worship is going to be the highest privilege of the believer. So we believe that the worship of God, foremost through a biblically informed and gospel-centered Sunday service, as a primary way to build up believers. So here at Fullerton, just as a reminder, we believe God could use everything, and we wholeheartedly accept that, but we believe what's revealed in the Bible is that one of the primary ways that God will give Jesus to people to save them and to build them up will be on Sunday worship, corporate gathering of Sundays. That's why we place a lot of emphasis on Sunday service in terms of time, thought, personnel, and money. Because Sunday service, through the means of grace, is going to be a primary way that the Bible says we could give people Jesus, build them up, and cause them to grow by the means of grace. But secondly, we also see that at Fullerton, we want to be able to seek to renew lives in Orange County and beyond by bringing them into our community. And our community is never perfect. There's cliques, there's people that don't get along. We want to embrace that and say, yeah, let's be real about this, but the gospel can cover that. So we want to cultivate a community where believers can plant deep roots in our church life, and they can experience the gospel warmth and intimacy through the various ministries that we have. And we particularly pick the word plant deep roots because we're not a commuter church. I mean, we may be, but we're not necessarily a revolving door church. We don't expect people to come here for 4 years and leave. We expect people to come here and consider actually this church to be their life church, to set up your roots, plant your roots, and this could be your family. And this will be the place that you see yourself for many years to come. And last but not least, we want to be a church that is intentionally focused on outreach, both in local evangelism, deeds of mercy, as well as missions. So we want to make outreach a vital part of our everyday experiences by bearing witness to Christ in local evangelism, but also deeds of mercy, and by actively participating in global missions. And so one of the areas that we thought we needed to work on is going to be on local mercy ministry and evangelism. So that's why our goals sort of reflect that sort of deficiency or challenge in our church life. So that's our vision, and this is our mission. This is how we seek to do it. We want to cultivate community to make people better worshipers. We want to evangelize so they can be disciples of Jesus, but also so they can be better worshipers. That's why worship is on top of that triangle. We get everybody in there. In heaven, all we're going to be doing in a miraculous way is worship. There'll be community, there won't be evangelism anymore, but there'll be community, but our primary purpose will be to worship God. And so that's something that's encouraging and beautiful. We want to reflect that here on this side of glory. So that's our vision and mission. Now we'll move into our status update on 2016 strategy and goals. I'm just going to introduce this, and then I'm going to hand the mic over to some of the other gentlemen who will be spearheading and leading some of our efforts. Let me show all of these. So to begin, one of the reasons that we developed what we call a 3 to 5 year strategy, for better or worse, is that for these 4 categories, 4 reasons. One of the reasons that we did this is actually to allow us to kind of take a step back, look at our church, and have sort of a bird's eye holistic view on the strengths and weaknesses of our church, given our theology and our vision and mission, and say, this is what we are good in. Let's capitalize on our strengths. These are areas that we are not so good in. So let's try to pray to the Lord and see what we could do to build that up. And one of the weaknesses that I think all of us could actually see, or maybe a challenge that all of us could agree on, is that we could develop a better heart for evangelism. A better heart that brings for the community and mercy ministry, so our goals reflect this. But we did a 3 to 5 year strategy to help us have a holistic bird's eye view. A second reason we did this is because it does help the church and leadership to keep track on our vision and mission. Because there's so many requests and so many convictions, good ones, that people have, so it's easy to get sort of sidetracked. But this helps us to kind of align our efforts with our vision and mission, saying we are a Reformed church, so we are actually a priority of worship. We do cultivate community. We also want to be evangelistic both locally and abroad with Reformed ministry to live and to teach historical Christian truths. So a 3 to 5 year document that I've written out, anybody's open to seeing it, is what we go through. That process is important to help us align our efforts, our resources, our hearts with our vision and mission. And then continue along. It also helps us to track where we're going, for better or worse. We're not a corporation, so we can't track a bottom line number in terms of money. spiritual realities are something that are untrackable, but at the same time, at least we could track some effort in stewardship, some use of things that we do have control under that will reflect our values, our vision, mission, and our goals. So we could track that in terms of who we try to hire, what sort of money do we actually, where are we outsourcing our money or using our money for? What is my time in terms of hours being allocated to that reflects our priorities and our goals for the next 3 to 5 years? So it helps us to do this, at least to a small degree, keep track of this, which leads us to our last one. It prioritizes our efforts given limited resources. That may be actually a big one because, for example, we could use more counseling resources at this church. There's definitely a need for that. We could use an outreach pastor or mercy ministry pastor to help reflect our conviction to be more evangelistic. So there's all kinds of resources or needs, but we have limited resources. So collectively with the leadership, we want to say, okay, we have to prioritize. We can't do everything. So we're going to prioritize and pick several and then try to move with this until the Lord seems to close that door, and then we'll pivot and then reorient and reprioritize our goals and agenda. So that's why, generally speaking, why we do a 3 to 5 year, in case people are like, man, it sounds so corporate. Why are we doing this? I think a lot of this is actually to strive for excellence by the grace of God, but also to be good stewards. We have a lot of resources at this church, both money and people, building. We want to be good stewards of this, and I think doing this strategy, 3 to 5 year document, for better or worse, helps us to prioritize our goals and our resources. So, these are our 3 goals that we shared in January to reflect sort of our strengths, but also to grow in our areas of weakness. So one is that we have a 2020 outreach vision, and that basically saying that we want to get 20 confessions of faith by 2020. So we're not good at evangelism locally. That's why people are like, why 20? Why not 100? I was like, well, I want to be realistic, but also have an element of faith. And so 20 just sounds good with 2020. So that was one thing. It's more marketable, so to speak. But also, we're not really good at it. So we want to set the bar low and then work from there. And so the Lord explodes our expectations, and that's a learning process for us. But for us, 20 actually is pretty significant, I think. And there has been a lot of great encouragement in terms of the Lord using us in order to reach out to de-churched people. People haven't gone to church for many years and have come back, unchurched people. And so we're trying to make an effort to grow in that area. The second goal that we have is actually college ministry, where we want to reach new lives and to seek to renew lives in Orange County, but to look at the fact that on average, our church in EM is getting older. So we want to try to shift the demographics, at least begin to consider, because we believe in what we're doing, that we have something unique to offer through the gospel. So we want to establish a college ministry, future leaders that we could hopefully disciple and train, and will carry on the reform vision that we have. And so we want to seek to establish a college ministry that Pastor David has been leading. And last but not least, which may be a really big one, is church planting, or maybe a multi-site, and we just want to consider and to pray that we can church plant out in order to renew lives. That maybe the most effective way is not only to improve our evangelism here, but to begin to consider and pray about planting another church with its own culture, that they could reach a different demographic, a different geographical region, with the same sort of theological, biblical convictions that we have. So those are our 3 goals that we placed out for 3 to 5 years. So we're going to give an update on each goal, where we consider where we're at. So as it says here, the objective of 2020 Outreach Vision is to create a culture of evangelism with a goal of 20 confessions of faith by 2020 from non-Christians, nominal Christians, and de-churched. Now, sort of segueing a little bit, but we're digressing. We keep the bar low a little bit. So we want just straight up atheists, non-believers, or reject Christianity. We want to reach them. That'll be the primary movement of our heart. But there's also other areas, other believers that are not believers, other people that are hard to kind of better serve and pastor. So there is what they call nominal Christians, where just by name they say they're Christian, but in reality they may not be. So we want to really minister to them and focus upon them and really get them to a sincere confession of faith. And there's also what they call de-churched people, which is basically maybe some of us here, you grow up in the church, then you leave church for 5 to 10 years, and so probably you don't reflect a Christian life, and all of a sudden for some reason you come back to church. But we want to be open to that. We want to reach people like that too, because it's a strong possibility they may not be true believers. So we want to be sort of nuanced and wise in how we understand and reach different people. So we have 2 upcoming supporting initiatives. I'm going to call Danny Choi up in about a minute, and then Horatio will share after this. This will be to help facilitate and then further our endeavors and our goal of reaching 20 people with confessions of faith. I just want to say before I segue in there that there has been a bunch of pocket testimonies within our church in terms of 2020 evangelism that I've personally been encouraged by. And so for people like, hey, have we been doing anything? What have we been doing? Just so as a quick update, if you look at the first half of our year, all our Bible studies, our Bible studies mostly confession, but all our sermons were specifically geared towards at least looking at conversions. So we looked at acts of evangelism or acts of conversion. We looked at trying to be more outward facing, more evangelistic, more communal in our endeavors. So we catered or we scheduled our sermon series, at least in the first 6 to 7 months, on outreach and evangelism. And also what we've done was that we had a evangelism seminar, which is just one day. I have reasons why we just made it as one day. So it actually was a really good turnout. We'll see where the fruit of that comes. But these are the stories that I get encouraged by, where they know that the church is doing this, they're trying their part. So there's been at least 2 families that have brought a non-believer in because of our vision, our goal. They didn't become saved, but at least it's a step. Actually, I'll take anything, because we may be that bad that any effort or intentionality to have that mindset to reach out to neighbors, to go and bring them into church will be big. So we had at least 2 families that brought in a couple of non-believers from their neighbors, and they brought them in, which I find a lot of encouragement in. A couple of community groups have already gotten together during Easter, and they invited all their non-believing friends or maybe nominal Christian friends. So we had a good turnout. We need to follow up and improve. But that's actually something to be thankful for. They saw this vision, they had a conviction, they put the money and the effort to making this happen. We just want to continue that sort of momentum. So those are things there are pockets here throughout the church that I just want to communicate. There's been people that come up to me and say, I've been more intentional at work about reaching out to my coworkers. I've been more thoughtful about the integrity of my work and what I say and how I think. I've been trying to actually reach out to non-believers to get them to come out. So it's hard, but they've been doing it. And so, in particularly the young adult ministry, I followed up with a 4-part series on evangelism. And so we want to try to work with that as David Peck leads that ministry, but even in the young adult ministry, they've been trying. They've been trying to invite people to our fellowship events. They've been trying to be more intentional in cultivating relationships to bring them out. So I want you to know that, at least in a small degree, we can be thankful and that the Lord is working and pushing us through here. That at least to some degree, we could be more intentional and thoughtful, and some people have been responsive to this. So I think we should be thankful and praise the Lord for at least some effort and evidences of grace. With that said, I'm going to call Danny Choi up, and he's going to share his thoughts and heart about what he wants to do. We'll do you first.
Hello. So one of the important components of the outreach vision is mercy ministry, and there's a lot to say here. I know I only have like 5 minutes, and so what I did, I should spread it out more. But there's on that wall there's a QR code. There's a bunch of documents I think that I'm going to be referring to that I won't be able to get to completely. So on your way out, or if you're close to it, you can find the documents. Okay. So why mercy ministry? Well, I think in the words of Tim Keller, mercy ministry is kingdom ministry, and I think that's well supported in Scripture. If you don't believe me, one of the files in the documents you're going to find is the PCA guidelines for mercy ministry. And in it, you're going to see that a lot of the basis for mercy ministry it follows the earthly ministry of Jesus. I think in particular, what you're going to find there is that really the basis of mercy ministry flows from the compassion of Jesus. And so just a few things I want to share with you that the guidelines point out. One is Christ's compassion is directed towards the needy. That's clear in Matthew 25. Jesus fed the hungry, healed the sick, comforted the sorrowing and afflicted. He gave an illustrative list of such human needs, including shelter, personal caring for the prisoner. Secondly, Christ's compassion is active. Okay, it's active. It's expressed in deed as well as word. And you see that clearly in Luke 24. And then lastly, Christ's compassion is gracious. directed towards the undeserving. We see that clearly in Luke 15 as well. Jesus ministered to publicans and sinners, and those who society would consider undeserving. Okay. So on this basis, Tim Keller says something further about Mercy Ministry. He goes on to say, and I think the quote is up there, Mercy Ministry is often carried out as a window to spiritual and theological redemption. And I want to key in on that word window because that really demonstrates, it really shows presents Mercy Ministry as a means to a greater end. And I know that overseas missions is uniquely different from what we're doing in Mercy Ministry, but the common ground that I want to point out for us is this idea of Mercy Ministry. And in particular, it's using this idea that Tim Keller brings out to us as a window, right? A window to spiritual and theological redemption. And so for me, and how I sort of see that, it's in the way of relationship building. And relationship building, the way I see it, it's a long approach. It's a long approach. It's not a hurried approach. But at the same time, we don't have to all sort of build it from the ground up. There are partners in the city right now who have built relationships already with those who are in the communities and the neighborhoods surrounding us. One of those groups came and spoke to us about a year and a half ago. The group's name is Solidarity. It's a wonderful group. It's a small group, but that group is committed to really serving the city of Fullerton. They exist in different sites across the city. The closest one to us is off of Lemon and Valencia. If you head up Lemon and make a right on Valencia, like deep in that neighborhood is one of their community centers. And they've done a great job in gaining trust, building friendships in the community. And so we've begun to explore partnerships with them. In fact, I think Steve Chai, we were able to begin volunteering at their summer program this past summer, and it's at their teen center. So anyways, I bring that up because that's a group that is going to be a potential partner for us. They do, right now they have a mom's group. They do tutoring for kids. And they also run a multi-site youth church for those who can't go to church because their parents don't have a church to go to or they can't get there. So for as much as they do, there's a few things that they don't do. And I think that's where we could come in. They do a lot of work with kids and moms, but they don't do a lot with adults. And if you can believe it, like 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, we started to do something like that where we reached out to adults and their kids. So a few of us, Elder Tom and Janet Kwan and a few others, started this computer class at the Technology Center. And we've reached out to folks around the city. We were in Buena Park back then. And to our surprise, it went really well. The technology piece, we could have done a lot better. We were just building it. But if we look back at what we did, I think Elder Tom will attest to this, more than what we did technologically or through the class, really the relationship that we built over that period of time was what we look most fondly back at. And again, it wasn't overnight, it took some time, but it's the kind of thing that we want to do again, given that we have more resources, a facility of our own, and I think the will to stay here, stay in it, take a long approach, and really commit to loving our neighbors. So I know I've run out of time, but I just want to say just one more thing, that we're doing we want to launch something like this, we want to pilot something in the fall, and get to starting something on our own or in partnership with Solidarity sometime in the beginning of the calendar year, January. Okay, so be on the lookout for announcements about that. And in the meantime, there are a few one-off things that we plan to do as well that are more holiday-based, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And something that's interesting that they shared with me for a group to start up doing is that they have ongoing meetings with teens and youth at their centers. Small groups have committed to just providing snacks or lunch or something on a regular basis that can allow us to at least do some basic, early, and simple kinds of ways of getting involved to serve the community and build up to more involved kinds of things. So there's a lot that we can do. If you are interested at all, feel free to contact me or Pastor Will or anybody else, because we do plan to get more involved and be more of a presence in the community around us. Okay, so that's all I'm going to share. And like I said, if you want more information, use your mobile devices and at least the PCA guidelines.
Thanks, Danny. And Rachel, he's going to present.
Help me out. Just pass it out. If you guys could pass this out. This makes it so I stay somewhat organized. So I was stressing out a lot because I don't have a lot to say because I wrote out everything. But just to let you know, my piece is going to be probably the most selfish and kind of mindless. So here's basically what happened while you guys are kind of getting the paper is Pastor Will early in the year approached me and said, oh, you know, Richard, can you take a stab at maybe leading some outreach efforts? You know, my knee-jerk was, no, dude, I'm busy. I got stuff, right? But, you know, I started on thinking about it and I thought, you know, maybe I can just kind of organize, help maybe some of the community groups organize some picnics where they can, you know, invite some of their neighbors or friends or friends of their kids that they're playing sports together with. And that's where it kind of started. And honestly, I got really bored. So my imagination kind of got the better of me. And then all of a sudden, the idea kind of started evolving a little bit. So basically, the purpose, I tried to obviously tie it through to the 2020 language, but you can read it on top. But the essence of the idea is this. What I wanted to do is organize the church broadly by you know, having a lot of different areas where people can volunteer and kind of step up and serve the other community groups. But the reason why I wanted to do that is because I wanted the community groups to be as free as possible to just simply host and spend time with whoever they're thinking about it and praying about from now until when we actually hold the events later in the year. So I'm thinking about two. So I've already spoken with two community group leaders that I thought would be kind of a good first stab at this. So I talked to Martin Lee's group and Dennis's group. So and they bought in on it. So anyways, the rest of the church, I thought it'd be just really cool if we can get together and have fun and serve them so that they can just worry about and think about inviting those people that are part of their communities, beyond the church community, to just deepen and really continue to build the relationships that they have with them. And there's a lot of intentionality that hopefully is in line and resonates with a lot of the things that Pastor Will has been talking about. So anyways, there's some FAQs, and I won't go through all of them because Danny ate up all my time. So let's go through some of the needs. So if you look at the paper, there's a bunch of different kind of needs. And there's going to be two events, so it's not just one. I want to do it once for Martin's group and once for Dennis's group. So that means that all the needs and kind of volunteer opportunities that we have here, there's actually a double set. So I don't want you to think that if you're signing up for one of those elements, that you're actually signing up to host both groups or kind of serve both groups. The more people that we have, the more flexible we can be. So as you can kind of see, idea people, that's just straightforward. It's just people that can help me with kind of idea brainstorming, things that can make it fun. And you know, a lot of this honestly is going to be, maybe it'll be fun for people that are immature like me, but it's really partly for a lot of the kids that are part of our lives too. I'm hoping that it'll be really fun for them. It'll build memories for them. It'll build memories for them with their parents and with their aunts and uncles or whoever, you know, that's part of their life. The logistics people are basically, like it says, it's just the people that are going to keep people like me in check and be real, straightforward, and it doesn't have to be different people. You know, some people are very balanced and actually have giftedness in both areas. The game crew are basically the guys that are going to be coming out on the day of the event and are going to help us run the events, run the little games. Just kind of their job is just to help when we need to do something. They're available to run that little mini game or whatever that we're going to put together. Okay? I'm doing okay. The food. So the food element also is important because we want to actually have all the food prepared. And even the food and all of that stuff, we want to completely take off the hands of the community groups. So that's all completely taken care of, all of it. Photos and videos, that's kind of their toddler crew. This is big, especially for those of us that have younger kids and we're okay with having other people watch them. But I talked to David Pack about this, Pastor David, and we actually have a toddler crew. And any of you guys in college group here? Guess what? You just got volunteered. No? There's no. You guys, well, they just got volunteered. So basically, what we're going to do is, even for my plan is to try to have it so that even the toddlers can have something that they're going to be cared for, so the parents can be a little bit of ease and can step away and hopefully have some fun too. Okay, so that's kind of all that's taken care of. So that's a big thing. But the food part of it, you know, one of the things that I want to just notate is it'd be really good to have somebody that's a lead food coordinator, and the other person actually is a lead toddler care person. So those are kind of two, for lack of a better term, kind of leadership roles that are part of this planning. But that's it. I finished doing it.
Thanks, Danny and Rachel. And again, if you guys have any questions, so I only gave them about 5 minutes, which isn't nearly enough for them to sort of vision cast for this. But if you want to discuss with them more, please feel free to reach out to myself. But better yet, probably reach out to them because they'll have the details and their plans more clearly in their heads. So if you have any questions, please go talk to them, and I'm sure we can always work together. We need as many people and people to pray as much as we can get. Okay, moving forward, I'm going to call Pastor David up to give us a status update on college ministry.
All right, this is going to be very brief and give you an overview. And like Pastor Will said, you'll have some time afterwards to kind of ask questions about college ministry and what we're up to. There are many. Let me just start off with the objective of college ministry. The objective of college ministry initiative is to establish a mature and stable college ministry to grow in the Reformed faith. And so that is our objective for the next 3 to 5 years. And then we'll see how the Lord leads and how the ministry grows and develops from there. There are many things involved to make a good and full college ministry. Many, many different elements. But we've identified 3. And if you remember, these are the 3 kind of key elements that we identified in our presentation 6 months ago. They're establishing a 4-year curriculum. What are the things we want our college students to know about the Christian faith in their undergraduate studies? Establishing a student leadership group. And third, having a very robust and vibrant Friday night program, Friday night Bible study. And so I'll give you a quick status update. For the 4-year curriculum, so far we've done a series on homosexuality and how to minister to our homosexual friends, reaching out to them with the gospel. And then right now we're going through Michael Horton's book, Ordinary, which is basically what does Christian life look like, ordinary Christian life. Right now, so far, as far as student leadership is concerned, I and the rest of my the leadership, which is Martin and Jason, we've been thinking about what qualities would make a good kind of student leader. So we've been thinking about that, and we've been beginning to identify certain individuals, certain students who we can start creating a student leadership group. We actually are calling them the servant team. And then Friday night Bible study, we've been just gathering at my house and having dinner and having more discussional studies. And this is all an attempt to cultivate community, because most of the college students didn't really know each other. We're still getting familiar with one another. So trying to create bonds and friendship. So what's next? What are we doing for the next academic year? We're continuing to develop a 4-year curriculum. Now you have to understand this 4-year curriculum is in 2 realms. One on Friday nights, which is usually more casual, more community-based, more discussional, and then we're hoping to establish a midweek Bible study on a college campus, either perhaps UCI or at Biola. And so right here, here are some of the curriculum that we're hoping to do in the 2016-2017 year. What is the gospel, which is by 9 marks, or an introduction to the Ordo Salutis or covenant theology. And basically the curriculum will depend upon the demographics. If we have a bunch of non-believers or very, very young early Christians coming out, we'll do something more introductory, like what is the gospel. If they're more established Christians who have a good knowledge of Bible and some theology, then we'll get into actual more kind of dense theology, Ordo Salutis, covenant theology. Also on the college student leadership front, as you heard, we're beginning to establish a student leadership group called the Servant Team, and we're hopefully going to continue to add to this as the ministry develops. Also, Jason and Martin's role has kind of changed. Before they were just kind of hanging out and helping us cultivate community, but they've kind of taken more of a spiritual mentorship role, where they are going to, they're responsible to spiritually mentor, some accountability and following up on students. So there's been a formalization of leadership structures and roles. That kind of upper leadership of Jason, Martin, and myself, the 3 of us, we call ourselves the steward team to mentor potential college leaders. And then thirdly, the Friday night Bible study. As I said before, we hope to establish a midweek campus Bible study to teach what makes us as a church distinctive and rich as a Reformed church. We're going to continue to do Friday night gatherings, but obviously if the ministry grows in numbers, then we need to rethink venue and format. Maybe something that's more of a seminar style or small group style. And then on Friday nights, our next kind of series will probably be on either discerning God's will and the intersection between faith and college life. So those are the 3 things, and that's it.
Thank you, Pastor David. We're going to move along. We're okay on time. We'll move along to church planning. One of the objectives, again, to even begin to think about doing a church plan was really because of the conviction to reach and renew lives in Orange County and beyond. I think if you look at the Bible, the local churches is the most effective way to do this. So we want to get better evangelism here at Fullerton, but if we want to continue to reach and save souls, then a church plant or perhaps a second site is another option to consider. So we shared this in January that we want to consider this, and there's only 2 things that we wanted to do in 2016. One, we wanted to hopefully hire an assistant pastor in the EM that could be our potential church planner, and then 2, we just want to pray. That's all we wanted to do. Some financial things behind the scenes. We wanted 10% of the missions budget to go to the side as seed money for down the road. But essentially, it's just going to find a church planner, assistant pastor that would work with us for several years. And then secondly, just to begin to pray for this church planner and begin to pray for a heart to do this. So this is the status update. So we had 3 aspects of a church plant that we wanted to consider. So finding a church planner. So this is actually, if you're looking at what did I do in terms of action steps, it all goes in this 3 to 5 year strategy document that's open to anyone, but it lists just kind of steps that I take, for better or worse. Some of this is just kind of walking blind. So finding a church planner. So what I've done is actually, I talked to a couple of church planners. I talked to a couple of people in our denomination, specifically this guy, Doug Swaggerty, who is a West Coast representative of our denominational M&A, Missions to North America. He's sort of a church planning guru, and a good friend of his, Dick Hoffman. Both of those guys are heavily involved in mentoring and church planning, and we're very involved in the Harbor Network down in San Diego. So I just met up with them to talk about and to pick their brain about church planning, but especially what to look for in a church planter, qualities, how do we go about it. And so I did this. I even had conversations with a couple of people, several of good guys who are actually interested. It didn't work out for various reasons, but we're trying to move that way forward. The biggest challenge that we face right now, it's not necessarily our conviction to do this per se, because we got a vision cast, we got to teach and preach on this. That, in my view, is going to be like year 2 and 3. 2017, 2018, but for now we just got to get that church planner before we start vision casting and teaching. But we haven't been able to do it, so there's challenges there. So I just want to report back to you. Part of the challenge is this. One, there's actually not a lot of great candidates out there, to be honest. But secondly, we have a lack of financial resources. It doesn't mean that we don't have any money to do this, but at the same time, our budget didn't necessarily go exactly according to the way I planned. So Elder Daniel, when he does the budget report, will give more specifics on that. But if you look at the second part, it says assess budget needs and determine gaps in finances. We came up with a creative way actually to come up with a salary for a church planner, but unfortunately there's been some challenges. So not completely thrown to the wayside, but it didn't work out, as I said, in the way that I planned. So we have limited financial resources, so we don't necessarily have at this point the clearest sort of budget or direction to hire somebody. So it's a little bit of a challenge that we're trying to pray and work through. But I want you guys to know this is where we're at. We have this conviction. At least I have this conviction. I think this is the way to go. But behind the scenes, again, it's going to be hire an assistant pastor that could be that church planner, and then begin to pray about this. So what did I learn is exactly what I just kind of shared. Now, church planning is going to be hard. As I discuss more with the two guys I talked in the beginning, it's really hard. It's a big scale sort of endeavor. We're talking about capital campaign. We need this money and people, and so it's a long road ahead if we continue to move forward with this. So what are our next steps? That's sort of what have we done so far? Talked to a couple of people, a couple of church plans. I looked at the budget. I talked to the elders. We're looking at this, trying to come up with creative ways. So we're going to continue to pray and figure that out. We have the conviction. We want to still do this, but what are our next steps given some unforeseen challenges? So one, we just need prayer from you guys to consider to give us more wisdom. So for the rest of the year, we're going to continue to look at our budget. We're going to see how our offering and how our budget allocation, our expenses goes. So we want to see if there's any other way to kind of creatively think a way around this. So it's a possibility that we may, depending on how the rest of the year goes and where the collective leadership wants to go, there's a potential chance that we may actually postpone this. We never want to get rid of it. We always want to be a church that wants a church plan out. But maybe the Lord is telling us now is not the best time. But we're not sure yet. So we need your prayer. We're going to pray. We'll see how the rest of the year goes. The finance and budget team will help us through this. And so we may have to deprioritize this particular goal, use our resources to other goals, and then maybe revisit this in a couple of years. Or maybe something happens and we explode and there's just some other avenue that we find, then maybe we can move forward. So it sort of just depends. We got to figure it out. Secondly, this will be, if we do decide to deprioritize this down the road, it will allow us to actually focus our resources on our other goals and maybe pivot and refocus our goals somewhere else. So maybe for the next couple of years we focus on counseling because there's a lot of counseling needs. The window is very wide open. So this may allow us in order to reconsider our priorities and refocus our resources that we have. But we're not sure yet. This is just sort of potential next steps. And also, again, as I keep saying, continue to pray. Pray for people to meet, that I'll be able to meet them, meet us, potential candidates. Pray that financially, the Lord has His ways and His timing. Who knows how that'll work? So if He doesn't want us to do this now, then we'll try to persevere as best as we can to see. But we're not sure at this point where that's going to go. If you have more questions about other thoughts in terms of action steps for this church planning goal, please come talk to me. The beginning is very simple: church planning and prayer, a little bit of allocation money. But after that, the plans become big. But in my view, we had to get this step first. Then we form an exploratory committee. Then they do all the hard work, and it's going to allocate a lot of our time towards that. But we're not there yet. So this is a status update on the church planning. So pray for us, and then we'll see where this goes. With that said, I'm going to call Elder Daniel up. He'll address the 2016 budget. That'll help clarify why there's some challenges with the church planning goal, but also just to kind of report back where we are financially. So this is your first.
Thank you. So reporting on our finances, let's see where to start. First of all, I want to thank everyone for just a continual support for the church. And obviously we had many plans for this year in terms of our budget, and we were just being very faithful in what we have and trying to spend and use our resources for God's glory. And there were some challenges in the first quarter in our offering and whatnot. So as you see, if you look at the first half financial summary, you're like, whoa, our budget was $650, but we were short $633, but then our net is still $7,000, more than what our actual budget is. You may look at that and goes, oh, well, are we really short? Yes and no. So one of the things that we wanted to do was some of the ministries that we mentioned in the earlier, such as college ministry, we had a lot of outreach events that we wanted to plan, and bigger part being the church planner activity. And so those were sort of planned within our budget. So that's why you kind of see that big budget amount for what we needed to expect in our offering as of first half of the year. But we were, not that short, but we were about 20,000 short in that respect. And what happened in the first quarter, I was kind of monitoring, what our income flow was, and I didn't quite see that making it, meet our current budget. So I actually asked some of the committee heads not to spend, not to hinder any ministerial needs like worship or what's essential, but definitely anything that may be extra, like just maintenance wise or whatnot. So I asked some of the ministry heads to kind of cut down on the spending. So in that respect, we did a good job of being in the green and not overspending what we don't have. So that's the main reason for us not being in the red. Another aspect is, as we prepare for the big portion of the amount that was budgeted was the church planner, so for the salaries and things like that. And we, on the first half, we should have had to maintain that sort of exact budget amount to account for that in the later half. Because it's not like in the second half we're going to get more offering per se. So it's just kind of been sort of built up to the point where at the first half we will be able to pay out that amount to potential pastor. So obviously not being met at the budget level and as well as being short. So that was sort of the reasoning for having a slight shortfall in terms of being able to fully support the church planner for the second half. Another sort of unseen here is, we do dedicate a large portion of our offering to missions, and we were fortunate enough to raise approximately, I think, about over $20,000 in the Cambodia Mission Project. And so, we're very grateful for that, and the missionaries out there are very grateful for that. But actually, that $20,000 came out of our regular offering budget. So instead of going to our budget, it kind of went to the missions budget. So those things happen, so that's kind of accounting for another, if you count for another $20,000 that was unforeseen, as well as the expenses and the offering. So that was just kind of offset on what we were expecting initially. And so that's kind of where we are, and I'm hoping to maybe revisit the budget a little bit and to update the committee heads into what we can potentially do. So kind of look out for email on that in coming weeks for the community leaders and their budgets. And so right now, with the carryover from the first half and just our net income for this first half, our balance is over 80,000 as of the first half of this year. So, and our general bank balance, also known as 은행 bank balance. So, we have obviously the general account won't match our bank balance just because things pending and things like that. So this was kind of a snapshot at end of June. So our regular balance was 160,000, and along with some of the other balances that we have in our various accounts, such as our regular money market, our missions account, as well as the missions money market, and our set aside CD. And so, yeah, we do have a healthy balance as of church bank itself. But obviously, we had some shortcomings in the first half, and hopefully, second half, typically we do have a slightly higher income, so perhaps we may make up that amount in the terms of what we lost in the first half, and hopefully we won't, detract from any, ministry needs that we may have, particularly the church planning. Hopefully we can take that up, and as well as the college ministry, we're going full force with that as well. So any resource that may need to go with that, we're not gonna detract from that. So.
I'm going to come up to begin to tie this in. So this is where we are asking for how can you participate and what can you guys do as members of the church to support the vision and the direction of our church. One, we always need prayer. We're always going to emphasize this. We're always going to push this, and specifically prayer for the goals that we have placed. We want you to pray for non-believers in your family. Pray that your heart will break for them so that you'll share the gospel with them. Pray for growth in college ministry if that's what the Lord wants, so we can renew lives of a younger generation, since we believe what we're teaching and believing in here. And pray for Danny Choi and leaders as we try to cultivate and create a local mercy ministry and to see what the Lord will do with this. Even though we're playing the long game here. And then also wisdom and direction for the church plan, given some of the challenges that we've seen and expressed here today. And also, in terms of practically participating, just always be a good member. Faithfully worship and come out Sundays. Be aware of where the church is going, what leadership is doing. At least if you could be aware, that'll go a long way. But also consider participating in the events that Horatio shared in terms of some of the events of Super Power Softball. So there's a lot of areas of need. And you could really, I feel like when you look at that list, there is every basic gift set that can be addressed. So whether you're administrative, relational, with your food, your heart of service, any of you can serve, at least in a small part, and there's different degrees of devotion in terms of time. So please consider participating in that. And also, as Danny has said, just keep your eye out for future one-off events and see how the Lord will move this ministry forward in terms of local mercy ministry, partnering with Solidarity and Love Fullerton. So just kind of be an eye out for that, and really consider sacrificing time or weekend to do this for the sake of the kingdom. And so that's what we encourage, and I pray that everyone consider and do. Before we go into in a couple of minutes of Q&A, just as a reminder, in terms of staffing, one, just as a reminder, we've announced this before, both through email, but also Sunday announcements, but I know Sunday announcements people don't listen because it's busy. So Pastor David Pack has been faithfully serving youth group for a couple of years, but he has officially transitioned now since the beginning of July, and he is now the college pastor as well as a young adult pastor. And he helps a lot with administration and preaching and teaching rotational schedule. So he is going to has officially transitioned to those areas. Our intern, Andrew Kim, has officially been, starting in July, our youth group intern, or youth group director. So he's going to start his second year at Westminster, California. And so in terms of staffing, all of that has already been made a transition in July. We announced it. I just want to announce it again so we're on the same page. And starting tomorrow, I will be on sort of a study leave, midi sabbatical. We're not sure what to call it. It's not really a sabbatical because a sabbatical is supposed to be much longer, but it's also sort of like a study leave. And so I just want to explain what the sabbatical is. It's not a vacation as much as I would want it to be, but it's significantly less work. Sabbatical, if I put it tersely, is basically I need rest from you. So that's how I love you guys. And I don't know if I can be put away. But it's actually rest from normal church work so then you can focus on other church work, as I understand it. So what I'm planning to do, is, which is going to be a lot less work, is that I'll rest from normal church work, but I'm going to focus on some things I wanted to do. And some things I actually don't want to do. So one, for example, I'm going to plan out the rest of the preaching and Bible study schedule for the year, perhaps into the first quarter 2017. I got to handle presbytery work since I'm in the examination committee. So I'm the secretary, so I got to divvy up administratively all the papers, and I got to grade all the papers and exams myself. So that'll be in the month of August. And then I'm planning to audit a class if the schedule allows. So I'm going to audit another class on marriage counseling from CCEF by supposedly their best marriage counselor, which is Winston Smith. So I plan to do that, and that's it. And actually, I plan to read 2 books. One will be on homosexuality, and one will be on introverts. So I wanted books that help me serve the church. So there's a book called Quiet, written by Susan Cain. If you read it, please let me know if it's good. But I'm planning to read that book, and then Kevin DeYoung's book on homosexuality. And so that's my plan. And then spend more time with family. So with that said, we have 30 seconds for questions. Actually, we have some time. We have several minutes. But any questions about anything? It was a lot. We kind of zipped through it. But any of our goals, the status update, 2020, church planning, college ministry. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask now. If you feel more comfortable, you can come to me or to the respective parties, ask them privately, individually. But I do want to take a couple of minutes to see if there are any questions we could address here that other people may have. So, yes, Martin.
So initially, church plan was because the church was growing so much, and we were thinking like, how are we going to address that, right? Initially, or what else part of the reason?
The growth of the church? Oh, no, not necessarily. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily to mitigate the growth of the church. I think we saw that the church is growing, and so we're like, well, if this trend keeps up, then we want to be a good steward of our resources as we reach people. So we thought, oh, maybe financially the income would go up. Maybe there'll be, more importantly, an increase in number of people and gifts. That's going to be more important than money. So like, oh, maybe that's part of the reason we can do this. Our heart was basically to reach people. That was the main driver of everything. So even if we weren't growing, I think we would want to consider this. Other questions, thoughts? Jennifer.
Can we get a more detailed breakdown of our expenses?
More detailed breakdown of expenses?
Or just the budget? Because I mean, it's a huge, these are big numbers. And
Yeah.
everything is lumped together.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. I'm not sure how other team wants to handle that. They want more detailed breakdown of expenses. So. Yeah, so he'll email you personally. You can bring further questions or follow up, or how do you want to handle that? Other questions? Ryan?
Yeah, as far as the 2020 goes,
Yes.
have we met any of those? Have we had like maybe 19 more to go? Or?
You were my 19. No, so I think like, yeah, we have actually. So it is actually a little bit subjective because the session as we interview people has to make a judgment call. But potentially there are at least like a couple of members, people who have become members, that would probably fall in the D church category, which again basically means that for many years they were essentially living like a non-believer. And so, but they came back to church, they liked it, they took time to think about it, they made a credible profession of faith. And so it just depends like how subjectively you want to make that assessment. But there's definitely been D-church people that have come to church. And so we've been encouraged by that. In terms of the actual number, you're looking at about 2 to 4. Other thoughts, questions before we pick up our kids? Okay, then let me close this in prayer, and then thanks for everyone for coming out. Father, we thank you so much for this time. Lord, we pray that you continue to just move our efforts and help us to be good stewards as we live this out with grace and truth and love. Please be with us, Lord, as we don't want to execute plans that are just from man, but ultimately plans that come from you as our Heavenly Father. So, Father, we thank you so much for this time, and just be with us through the rest of the week. Help us to find rest in you. We thank you, and we pray this in Jesus Christ. Amen.